Hey everyone, my name is Michael and welcome back to my channel where we learn languages, specifically Spanish. So today we're going to talk about the Spanish past tense, a huge overview from beginning to end. What are all of the tenses? Now this is the second time that I'm making this video. The first time I'm like, I'm going to make a really quick video, and it turned out to be 60 minutes long, and no computer on earth that I have direct contact with could render and could actually upload it. So I'm going to make this a lot faster. I'm going to really skim over the surface. I'm going to have other videos that go a little bit more in depth over every single tense. And of course you can ask questions in the comments below and I'll answer them, but this is going to be super high level. So this is for beginners who are like, hey, I don't know exactly what to expect in the past tense. I would like to kind of see a big, almost like one pager of what I'm going to be learning. It's also for intermediates who say, hey, I think I have the first three tenses good, but those other four, I'm not sure if I'm using them well. And for advanced speakers who are like, hey, I'd like a review. So hopefully you find this interesting, you find it helpful, and let's get started. I also do plan to post this as a blog on my website at www.strangelanguageacquisition.com. You can find that below. Also, I do come out with weekly lessons every single week on my Patreon where I delve into it. I do Q&As, a bunch of benefits, and make sure to subscribe to this channel. We are on the road to 100 subscribers. I know you can find a bunch of YouTubers online that are like, we're on the road to 500,000, 1 million, 2.5 billion subscribers. You know, I'm gonna aim a little lower. I'm at 40 subscribers right now. And I could say that we could go for 50, but I'm gonna aim high. I'm gonna aim really high and go for 100. And if we do reach 100, it'd make me super happy because that means that I am helping more people out and more people are learning. It's not because I care how many people are actually viewing it or these vanity metrics. It just means that people are actually learning. I'd rather have a lower subscriber count with people who actually care about Spanish than an inflated one where no one really cares. So if you do want to learn Spanish, make sure to hit subscribe and let's start with the video. So we're here with the Preterite Tense. So you should see me in picture, which is very cool because I've seen other YouTubers do it and I was like, oh, that can't be that hard. Turns out it's a little harder than I thought, but we're here. So we're gonna start off with the Preterite Tense out of the 7 tenses for the past tense that we're gonna talk about today. So we're only gonna talk about the past tense in the indicative mood. I'm not gonna talk about past subjunctives, where I'm not gonna do anything with the past in the subjunctive mood, just in the indicative. If you don't know what that means, watch more of my videos. So we're here with the Preterite and we're here in SpanishDict.com. Awesome resource. This is, I stumbled upon Spanish Dict when I was looking for graphs and different tables because I'm a good teacher, but I don't know if I'm the best graphic designer, and I'm good with technology, but it'd take me hours. So I found their stuff and it's so good. It's like really plainly put. It's aesthetically pleasing. I do not have any affiliation with them at all, although Spanish Dict, if you wanna do something, if you wanna send me a contract or something or work something out, we can definitely do that. So with the Preterite, we're gonna go down. I'm scrolling down. And what's really cool about this is that these links I'm gonna show you below, so you can literally go to this page and see for yourself what I'm explaining. So here we have, it is, how to turn my pen on. Here we have the Preterite Tense, and underneath they give you like a bunch of questions that you can use to kind of go over the Preterite Tense, which are pretty useful. Now the first thing that we're gonna find is the explanation, which is awesome. The explanation usually in these pages of Spanish Dict are quick answers and they give you a 1 to 2 sentence summary, which is always great. So for the Preterite Tense, it is the Spanish Preterite Tense, el pretérito, or el pretérito perfecto simple, is used to describe actions completed at a point in the past. Now, important note that they give you below. The Spanish Preterite Tense is not used to describe habitual or continuous actions in the past with no specific beginning or end. In such cases, the imperfect tense is used. If you're already confused, don't worry, I'm gonna explain it. So what's cool about Spanish Dict is that they also give you pages that they compare different things that are more peculiar, such as the Preterite and imperfect, even though it's not that peculiar. They do a good job of summarizing together, but the Preterite tense, what we are in right now, just think about it this way. It happened at some point in the past. That's all you need to know. It happened at some point in the past. It was started and it ended. Like, I ran at some point in the past. Was it yesterday? Was it this morning? Did it just happen? Was it 2 years ago? I don't know. It just happened. It's very mysterious. It's a mysterious conjugation. And what we're going to use for this is the 90% rule. And I'm going to explain the 90% rule now because I always use it for all tenses, all grammar, all languages. The 90% rule is super important because I teach it to all my students and it comes across in all my videos over every single grammar concept and every single language. The 90% rule is that you should find the one rule that will get you right 9 out of 10 times. What is that rule? For the preterite, that rule is it happened at some point in the past and that's all we know about it. It happened at some point in the past. It began and it ended and it was one time. That's all we know. So the reason why this is very important because I see a lot of people who are trying to learn Spanish who will say, well, I want to learn every single rule just in case because of our ego. We're afraid to make mistakes and I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to look stupid. So they learn these like 12 different rules or even 6 different rules. It doesn't have to be that many. But then when it comes to actually using it, then they're there with their Spanish partner, they're practicing, and then it comes up to use it and they're like, oh wait, hold on, give me a second. So out of the 7 rules, the subjunctive is before the preterite and the pluscuamperfecto, and it's in the past before that other event, but the adverb is across the noun who's sitting in front of the verb. Corrí? And it's just gonna be a snowball effect where you're gonna overanalyze it. How much better would it be if you're like, it's coming up, I think it's that one rule where it just happened one time. Corrí. And your partner's like, correct. And you're like, okay, moving on. But maybe you don't say it right. Maybe you get it wrong. Maybe it's that 1 out of 10 times that you get it wrong. And at that point, you ask your partner, hey, what did I do to get it wrong? And they might say, well, in this case, I know it's a weird case, but you would usually use it like this. And you're like, okay, I will save that for later. I can write it down and I can learn it. And this way you can move on. This way that you can say, okay, next time I come to a similar situation like this where we're talking about this in this tense, I know what to do, but I can move on because the people that don't move on usually get frustrated. They get burnt out trying to learn all these rules, which are super hard to cram into your head. And then they stop learning Spanish, which is what we don't want to do. Find the 90% rule and keep going. So for the preterite tense is it happened at some point in the past. Now we're going down and we see that for the endings, we have AR verbs and ER and IR verbs. Cool that we only have 2 lists. In the 60-minute video that I did of this, I went over it and that's why it was 60 minutes because I did this for all the tenses, but this is a quick overview. So if you don't understand what this means, watch more of my videos or you can look it up online. Cool, here it tells you about mando una carta. It's very important to keep an eye on accents because mando una carta is I send a letter, and then mandó una carta, she sent a letter. Ella mandó una carta, mando una carta. So that's very important. Why? Go into the resource, and I will make a video on all these tests in depth in the future. Then you have siempre cocinamos paella los domingos, ayer cocinamos paella para mi familia. So, same verb, but it's different things, depends. Some more stuff that I explained in the 60-minute video. And then we have the irregulars. So the irregulars are very important because they're verbs that usually are used very often. Unfortunately, right? Because if the irregulars are verbs that no one uses, you'd be like, all right, who cares about the irregulars? Ser, to be, ir, to go, dar, to give, ver, to see. That's super important. And that's why if you see my other video of the 2 most important verbs in Spanish, which are ser y estar, ser is very regular. It's important to actually memorize these conjugations because for the most part, I always say don't memorize them. You're going to get a rhythm where you're going to see where the stem change is, where the stem ends, and then where you put the ending, and you're going to be like, okay, that makes sense. But once you get to irregular, it's like when you're playing a song and you're like, dun, 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 and it's like, whoa, what's going on there? And it might happen to other verbs too, but when you get an irregular verb, such as diste, dio, dimos, distes, dieron, it's obviously a lot of learners get it wrong, but when you get it right, it just shows, even if you're an intermediate speaker, it shows how advanced you are. If you say, for example, le di la silla, that seems like a very simple sentence. I gave him the chair. But you're using subject pronouns, you're using the. It's like, it's harder than it looks. So if someone came up to me as a student and the student gave someone else a chair and said, le di la silla, le di una silla, I'd be like, whoa, that's pretty good. That's a lot of stuff that's going on there, even though it's so simple. So you need to learn these. Luckily enough, ser and ir, if you can see here, have the same ones. Yo fui cocinero. Yo fui al supermercado. Same one. Go figure. But yeah, irregulars are super important. Then you have the other rules that 10 time. You have events in a sequence. Me levanté, me vestí y salí para la fiesta. Specific times and dates. Y regresé anoche a las 10. Then you have beginnings and ends. Empezó a nevar. And then you have completed events. Compré un coche nuevo. So as you can see, the 90% rule actually encompasses the first and second one, which is it's something that happened in the past. Actually, not the second one, but a complete event, it happened in the past. That's the 90% rule. Use it, and you will see that all the other tenses are going to have rules that are, this is the most simple one. It's called the simple past, right? All the other ones are going to have like a little bit more complicated rules. For this one, it's just, it happened at some point in the past. Anyways, I think I went over everything, and let's go to the second one, which is the imperfect. So now we're in the imperfect. We just went over the preterite. Usually in every single university class, high school class, you go from preterite to imperfect. That's the next one. So with the imperfect, we're going to go down. As you can see, it's cool that it has all these review questions if you want to go over them. There's the imperfect, and here's a quick explanation, our favorite quick explanation. So let's select all, it's coming everywhere. The Spanish imperfect tense, el pretérito imperfecto o copretérito, is used to describe past habitual actions or to talk about what someone was doing when they were interrupted by something else. So if I would have to if I had technology, if I had to pick the 90% rule, there are two that they give you right here, which is it was a past habitual action or when someone was being interrupted. I find that most of the time, when you're talking about the imperfect, it's usually going to be habitual actions that kind of make you use the imperfect more. Because to be interrupted, you need a little bit more, I know it sounds silly, but you need a little bit more confidence when you're speaking to start to get a little bit more complex in your sentences, that you were even interrupted. Usually you start off using the imperfect and just habitual actions, very simple thing, in very simple terms. So I would say that 90% is a habitual action. And after that, once you get it down, then you go to interrupted. So if you keep going down, you see, cool, we only have two lists again, AR verbs and then ER and IR verbs. So it shouldn't be too hard. And it's super common endings. I mean, you're gonna hear it all the time. The aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban, ia, ias, ia, iamos, ias, ian, hear all the time. Then you have the irregular verbs right here. And cool, there's only 3 in the imperfect. So you just have to memorize these. Yo iba, yo era, yo veía. These are super, 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 super. These are super common verbs. So by memorizing these, you're not memorizing stupid verbs that you're never going to use again. These are super common. Then here you have the 10% rule again, that other 10%. So you have habitual repeated actions, which is the 90%. Almorzamos cada día. We used to eat lunch together every day. Todos los sábados, las mujeres iban de compras. Every Saturday, it was a habitual action. Every Saturday, they would go shopping. Almorzamos cada día. We ate every single day. Actions that were in progress in the past, that's that second 90% rule. Iba a clase cuando sonó el teléfono. I was going to class when the telephone rang. Mi papá cocinaba cuando entré a casa. My dad was cooking when I came into home. So he was doing something when I did this. Then times and dates, which is an important one, but again, you'll just learn it as you're going. Of course, if you're like, oh, that's really interesting, I really would like to know times and dates because I feel like I'm struggling with that. Of course, learn it. It's not like, no, Michael said 90% rule, don't learn anything else. Obviously go, but if you're like, actually, there's like 5 different ones here and I'm feeling very overwhelmed, just go for the 90% rule. Then you have age, which is a very common one as well. La niña tenía 4 años. Los perros tenían 2 años cuando los adopté. The dogs were 2 years old. When using age, you use imperfect. And then the 5th one is descriptions, characteristics, and conditions. So, of course, all of these are popular, right? You're going to use all of these, but you're going to learn them more as you go. When you make a mistake and you're like, okay, I was using a characteristic. What do you say was wrong when I used a preterite? Now you know. Mi profesor era alto y tenía el pelo ondulado. El campo era bello. The countryside was beautiful. Hacía calor esa noche. Me sentía feliz con mi trabajo nuevo. Quería mudarme a otro país. So anyways, wish I could go into this a little bit more. Let's go on to the next one. Hey everyone, so now we're at the Spanish Preterite Progressive tense. The tenses are slowly going longer. So far we've done the preterite, like the simple past, we did the imperfect. Those two are usually together. I mean, you've obviously, if you've studied in high school or college, you've seen like little quizzes like, do you use imperfect or preterite? But now you know. And now we're going to go on to other ones that we start to get to those where, unless you really study Spanish or you really try to use it, you're probably not getting to, because they're just intimidating. You're like, you don't use it as often. You can probably get away with a lot of conversation already with preterite and imperfect, but this doesn't mean, this is why I'm doing a one-pager. It doesn't mean that you need to use all of these, but obviously if you start to use all of these, your Spanish is just gonna get more nuanced with different shades of gray, and you're gonna be able to emphasize stuff that you wanna emphasize. Trust me, once you're an intermediate and you're like, hey, I wanna make it to that next level, it's not just about saying what happened. It's about describing it. It's describing how it made you feel, how the other person should interpret what happened, how things correlate with other things. Anyways, before getting too meta, we have the Spanish Preterite Progressive tense. So the progressive tense is like adding an ing. I was walking. Progressive, something was happening. So this can happen in the future progressive, past progressive, there's a bunch of different ones. But right now we're talking about the past tense. So we have the Preterite Progressive tense, and we have the imperfect progressive tense, which we'll do next. So we have two progressive tenses. So really quick answer. In Spanish, the Preterite Progressive tense, also called the Preterite Continuous tense, is used to talk about something that was going on at some point in the past. Hoy me estuve muriendo de frío. I was freezing cold today. Hey everyone, so I didn't like the way I explained the Preterite Progressive tense before, so I'm going to do it again in a better way. These tenses, once you get into them, they start to get a little bit complicated, especially when you compare them to others. So here's the 90% rule for the Preterite Progressive. It is that you did something in the past, and it was a length of time, but you're showing that it started and it ended. So for example, estuve caminando. If you put that into a sentence, I was walking, you say, hey, at some point in the past I started, and at some point in the past I ended. So it's not like caminé, which is just the preterite, right? It's just I walked. You really know nothing else about that. You just, something happened and something ended. But when you say estuve caminando, that's when you add a little bit more shades of gray, and you are able to give your sentences a little bit more description, a little meaning. Again, I'm gonna do another video on this, getting more in depth on it, but that's pretty much the basics. You do have to add an estad in preterite plus the present participle. So yo estuve, tú estuviste, and to see that in action. So here we have all the rules, right? Awesome rules, we like it. Nice rules. They add a lot. Escribiendo, comiendo, but this is a two-parter. Like you need the estad and then you need the verb. So let's see it in a sentence. Estuve estudiando todo el fin de semana. We were studying all weekend. Quick notes, the Preterite Progressive tense, opposed to the imperfect tense, is used quite a bit in Spain. It's hard to say that it's only used here or here, because in every country, then you have the regions in every country, and some regions don't use it, some regions do. This can happen in Colombia and Mexico and Argentina and Chile, where some do, some don't. In Spain, we're gonna look at the imperfect right now, and I'll explain more about it later. I think it'll make more sense once we go to the imperfect. So we're here with the Spanish Imperfect Progressive tense. We just went over the preterite, the imperfect, the Preterite Progressive, and now the Imperfect Progressive. So for the Imperfect Progressive, it's important to note that this one is more widely used, I think. The quick answer for the Imperfect Progressive is the Imperfect Progressive.
Have you ever had a dream that you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
The imperfect progressive tense tells what a person was doing. It's especially useful when you want to emphasize the fact that an action in the past was interrupted. And so here you have a little bit more about it. Here it tells you kind of like the formula, because you need two verbs to do this, estar and then the actual present participle. Estaba hablando, estabas hablando, you were speaking. Here we have the cool little forms. It tells you, and here are the examples. So you have, estaba hablando con mi madre cuando llamaste. I was talking to my mother when you called. Estaba trabajando a las 8. He was working at 8 o'clock. Nos vio cuando estábamos caminando en el parque. He saw us when we were walking in the park. So you have those 3 examples. So the 90% rule for this is you want to think of it as the imperfect, but you really want to emphasize that you were doing something before you're interrupted. So for example, estaba hablando con mi madre. You could use it as I was talking with my mother. You could but it's kind of, at times, it can seem a little like, and then, estaba hablando con mi madre. And then what happened? Cuando llamaste. Ah, okay. Something was happening. I was doing this. And then it's the same in English. You can say, I was drinking water. If someone asks you a question and you want to respond, but if you just go to someone and you're like, I was drinking water, the other person will be like, cool, what's the point? I was drinking water, and then this person came out of nowhere and hit me. Like, oh, that's why. It's like, it's just more of an emphasis. I can't wait to go into this more. So now we have those 4. Let's go on to the 5th one. Okay, so we've gone over so far the preterite, imperfect, the 2 progressives, preterite progressive, and the imperfect progressive, and now we're to the perfect ones. So the perfect, I could do a whole other video because it spans across a lot of different modalities and verbs. But for right now, for the past tense, we're going to do present perfect. What is the present perfect? I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad that we have a quick answer here. And by the way, you can notice here, up here, we have a start quiz now. These quizzes are super useful if you want to kind of logically know if you can do it. Because if you're trying to use, for example, the present perfect in a conversation, and you don't even know how to use it on paper, we have a problem. Yes, you can try and do it. Of course, I've seen people be able to kind of figure it out by talking, but there's a difference, at least for me, knowing something logically and knowing something instinctively. I mean, that is, I think it's like 2 different levels. Like once you can do it on paper and you have time, you're like, okay, is it here? Let me think a little bit. And you get like a 30 out of 40. That's really good. That's when you can be like, okay, now instinctively, I'm going to have like half the time, if that, I'm going to have like milliseconds to decide if I'm going to use it or not. And that's when it's more instinctive. And that's where, I mean, if you got like a 0 out of 40 on this present perfect and you try to use it talking, I would say best of luck. So for the quick answer, the Spanish present perfect, or el pretérito perfecto compuesto, o el antepresente, it is used to talk about things that start in the past, which continue or repeat in the present. It is also used to talk about things that have happened in the recent past. So this is one of those that actually, it's very, very useful. So even if people don't know the progressive ones and don't care about all the Spanish tenses, they usually feel like they need to use this one. So here we have the formula, present indicative of haber and past participle. And then here we have our perfect examples. So the 90% rule for this, and this is at least in Spain, is that it just happened. For example, it's in the afternoon. It must have been at least this morning. If it's anything more than like yesterday or even more, then it's the preterite. And then it's like, it happened. But if it's like today, at some point, it just happened, then you use this. And now I used to say that it was only in Spain, but of course, in some expressions, it's used in Mexico. In some expressions, it's used in Colombia. In some regions, it's used. It's like you can never just say, so for a lot of people that are, which I'm fine with, who are trying to only speak the dialect of a specific country or use that vocabulary that's absolutely fine. But it's good to know kind of all of these, even if the specific region you're trying to emulate doesn't use it, because hopefully you're gonna speak from people all over the world, and that's why you're trying to speak Spanish. Maybe to your family, maybe to your girlfriend or boyfriend, but maybe to a lot of people. Using the present perfect, even if maybe you don't use it, it's good to know what it is. In case you hear other people use it, and you're like, oh, okay, I don't use it, but I know what that is. And if you are going to use it, especially if you're planning to move to Spain or you're trying to learn the Spanish from Spain, it is super, super, super useful. We have the formula up there, and then we scroll down, we have all of these examples. Él ha dormido 10 horas. He has slept 10 hours. He just slept 10 hours. This was not a year ago. He just did it. So a lot of it is just that it's happened and it's continuing into the present. Ustedes han hecho un pastel delicioso. You people, you have made a delicious cake. You just made it. You made a delicious cake. Ellas, this last one, ellas han oído la verdad. They have heard the truth. They just heard it. If not, you would say, ellas oyeron la verdad. Lo oyeron. ¿Cuándo? No lo sé. I don't know when they heard it. They heard it maybe last week, Maybe a year ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 100 centuries ago. But ellas han oído la verdad, they just heard it. So here we have a little bit more of stuff that you can see that is going to help you. Lo has visto. He vivido aquí por muchos años. It kind of helps you distinguish between the present perfect and present simple with a couple of other examples, such as he comprado la leche y los panes. I have just bought them. Acabo de comprar la leche y los panes. Acabo is a good way of actually circumventing using the present perfect, because acabo de comprar is I just did it. So I don't have to tell you with the verb conjugation. But anyways, I know this seems super superficial, but at least now you know what the present perfect is in just a couple of sentences, and we can move on to the next tense. So the Spanish Preterite Perfect tense. So now we've gone over the preterite, the imperfect, the two progressives, the present perfect, and now the Spanish Preterite Perfect tense. Quick answer right here. The good thing about this tense is that we are not going to use it. The best of tenses. The Preterite Perfect tense, or el pretérito anterior, or el antepretérito, is primarily used formally or literally in written text. It describes an action in the past that happened immediately before another action in the past. So here we have the formula, preterite haber past participle. These are a combination of two verbs. And yeah, it's one of those verbs that it's not really used, but it's good to know in case you ever put like conjugations of ver, and then you see the Spanish Preterite Perfect tense, and you're like, what the hell is that monster, that all those words together? And you can be like, oh, okay, now I know what it's used for. It's used for an action that's immediately used before another action, but I don't really need to know it because it's only for literary works. Now, usually it is, right? It says here's primarily used. If there's some region in the world that still uses this, now you know what it is and you can use it. Or if you read a lot in Spanish, you can say, oh, now I know what that tense is, because I was kind of always a little perplexed by it and I didn't know if I should use it with my Spanish partner. Although if you are reading this in a text, good job. You're doing some pretty advanced reading, because it's telling you something that happened before something else. And if you're really paying attention, it sounds like a mystery novel, then your level better be pretty high. But here we have the preterite of haber, yo hube, tú hubiste, él, ella hubo, nosotros hubimos, vosotros hubisteis, ellos, ellas, usted hubieron. And here's the first example. En cuanto hube visto a mi primo, salió. As soon as I had seen my cousin, he left. Cuando hubiste llegado a la fiesta, cantamos la canción. As soon as you had arrived to the party, we sang the song. So, nothing more to that. Notice that the haber and the past participle never are separated in this tense. The object pronouns are present. They go immediately before the tense. Now, you might be thinking I'm going very fast, which I am, but that's because I'm doing more videos of this in the future. I know I've already said this a million times, but I feel bad because I always want to explain as much as I can so you know exactly what you're doing. But in this one, there's not much else to know, but you have the resource below if you want to search it up a little bit more. And let's go on to the final tense. All right, welcome to the final tense. Hopefully this is not 60 minutes, and I don't know how long it's going to be, but as long as it's below 60 minutes, I'm happy. So we have the past perfect forms and uses. So this is just the past perfect. That's kind of like the most common way to say it, the past perfect. El pretérito pluscuamperfecto or el antecopreterito. I've never heard of it antecopreterito, but el pretérito pluscuamperfecto, it's funny, when you're kind of making fun of all these like kind of complicated names, usually pluscuamperfecto comes on because you're like, it's such a long name, it just literally deters you from even trying to learn the conjugations. But the quick answer for this last one is the past perfect, el pretérito pluscuamperfecto or antecopreterito, also known as the pluperfect, is used to talk about a past action that happened prior to another action in the past. So that's the 90% rule. It happened before another action in the past. Now, you might think, well, that's not a very helpful 90% rule. It is, but honestly, this is a pretty advanced form of speaking because you have to have so many other things right before you can even use this form right. It kind of makes me think of like a RAM, like your laptop. Like if you have a bunch of tabs open for other things that you're just thinking about vocabulary, for grammar, you're thinking about all these things, there's no way you can have this application go. It's gonna suck up way too much data. Your computer's gonna crash. But if everything's closed because it's running in the background and it's instinctive, right? It's like you already got it all down. You just need this one application up and this is the one thing you're focusing on, then you can do it. But if not, it's too complicated. So here it gives you haber in the past, haber in the imperfect and past participle. It gives you the formula. These formulas are awesome. And here are some examples. So había visto ya mi primo is the first one. I would add something else after it. Había visto ya mi primo. So I had already seen my cousin before this happened. So it kind of like is a little bit of a short sentence. Habías cantado en la fiesta cuando llegué. So that's a good one. That's like a full sentence. You had already sung at the party when I arrived. So I had arrived, that's in the past tense, but you had already sang before I'd arrived. There's two things that happen in the past tense. Usted había leído el libro antes que él. You had read the book before him. Él había sacado su gorro cuando entró en mi casa. We had taken off his hat before entering the house. So as you can see, it's not super clear that they're like always in the past tense, and I'm sure there's like better examples. I'm feeling like these examples are not the best. Ustedes habían vuelto cuando ellos salieron. Ya lo había visto. I had already seen him. I'd already seen them. So if we want to make this a little bit longer, you could say, ya lo había visto cuando entré en su casa. I had already seen him when I entered in his home. So that is the last tense. Hopefully this is a good overview for you. We have the 7 tenses. We have the preterites, the imperfect, the preterite progressive, the imperfect progressive, the present perfect, the preterite perfect, the one we don't use, and now the past perfect, the 7 tenses. So you made it to the end, the 7 tenses. Now let me know, is there any tense that I didn't get? Now I see why, after doing my research, that people are like, I'm just gonna give them the 3 most common ones or the 6 more common ones. I think I got all of them. I think I got the 7 most used and even not used past Spanish tenses in the indicative. I think I got all of them, the 7. These are the ones that you are gonna use, some that you're gonna use less, some that are more advanced than others. It's important to know that it is a journey and that you're not gonna get it all at once. From what I see with my experience, people do very good with the preterite, imperfect, and then they start to lose steam. So by the time you even get to the present perfect, the advanced people are still going, the people that really want to learn Spanish, but then once you get to the past perfect, it's like a 1% of the Spanish speakers. But I'm here to tell you, don't give up hope. Keep going. I hope to do another one-pager like this for the future tense, for the subjunctive mood, and I plan to also put a blog post on this, so if you want to read it, it's going to be very helpful as well. And remember that I give weekly lessons on my Patreon in depth every single week for 1 hour with Q&As where you can submit your questions and I'll answer them. And I also give private lessons at strangelanguageacquisition.com. On the road to 100 subscribers. Let's get there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.